didn't have a C.
All right, here's chapter 2, the test from first quarter. We're going to review this for your exam, and I'm going to tell you what specifically is going to be on the exam. Question number 1 is on the exam. Determine graphically the number of solutions. Okay, this is the first question for chapter 2. This is on the calculator portion. Actually is, oh wait, excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm
Gotta go
sorry.
back, please.
Go back one, go back one. Go back one. My fault.
Just wondering.
Moving ahead of myself. Okay. If you recall, this is the first part of the chapter 2 test. I need you guys do this first part without a calculator. Most of these were in quadratic form. A lot of them were actually quadratic problems, but you were asked to do these problems without a calculator. Lucky for you, you can use a calculator. After you took this test, I showed you guys how to use the calculator. So what could you do on your test now? You can type these all in your calculator. But what do you have to set them equal to? 0. Now the only problem is, if it's an exact answer, and you'll know if it's an exact answer, you're going to have to unfortunately use the quadratic formula. What does an exact answer look like? Plus or minus the square root of something. But if it has a decimal in it, you're going to use a calculator. Now, question number 1, how do you solve that? That's an easy one. Question number 1, you're just simply going to factor it. How does number 1 factor? First set it equal to 0. And factor. And you get x is equal to -1/2, and x is equal to 3. So what you could do on this one is you could type it in your calculator. You guys remember how to do that? Let's review. How would you do this? And that's why you really don't even have to know how to factor. So, you're going to go, you could type in 2x squared on anything. Whoops. I always do that. -3.
That's what I got.
Should be a correct.
Straight.
Why did I get that? Why did I get a cubic?
I'm not sure. 5 times.
Wait, go to tab.
Hers is like type
What
it
does it look like?
Yeah, I know. I can type it wrong.
Times 5x.
Oh, I did times 5x.
Yeah.
That's why.
Ooh.
Okay, I times so 5x. Sorry, guys. So it is 2x raised to the second power minus 5x and then minus 3. Oh my gosh.
Here we go.
Let's still run it though.
I know.
Just kidding.
Do you have it in yours?
I
Do you have it in yours? You guys.
I do.
Who has it?
I do.
Thank you, Abby.
Yes.
You guys are failures.
Come on.
There you go.
Should be ashamed.
You're
of
gonna
yourself.
type it in, and you're gonna find your 2 zeros, which are -1/2 and 3. Thank you, Abby. Now, if you would prefer to have the other, the 83 or the 84, I have a hard time typing with these buttons. I like the 83s, but it's up to you. Next one. How do you solve, Abby, here's your calculator back. How do you solve the next one? You do need to know how to take the square root of both sides. That's on your test. How do you square root both sides? For this one, what do you do? Add 3. When you add 3, what do you get? Then what? Then what? Square root both sides. How do you simplify this? And then what?
Don't you give up?
Whoops.
What, Rachel? No? Oh, you're talking on this. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about like the bridge. Pardon?
Divided by 3.
Okay.
Square root both sides.
X minus 4
X minus 4 equals plus or minus 2 root 2. X is 4 plus or minus 2 root 2. That's your answer. That is an exact answer. Number 3 is on your test. It's actually on a couple of times.
Hey.
Now be careful on this one. First of all, how do you factor the numerator? How do you factor this numerator? X plus 4. And how do you factor the denominator?
X plus 4, X minus 4. There's a whole
What cancels?
X plus 4.
Where's the snake?
So what's your answer? You're going to set just the numerator equal to 0, so x is equal to 1.
The denominator's not like Abby.
You do have a whole at -4, but you don't have a 0 here. It's only at 1. You only set your numerator equal to 0. Now these next two, we tested you on them. You do have to do one of them. But these were asking you how to do it was the process, completing the square or quadratic formula. I don't care which we're not gonna look at your method, so let's just do one of them. You could do quadratic or complete the square. If you were to use completing the square, you would divide everything by 2. If you were to do the quadratic formula, what is the quadratic formula? It's the opposite of b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So you get 8 plus or minus 64 minus 4 times 2 times -3 all over 4, 2 times 2, which is 4. You get 8 plus or minus the square root of 88 over 4. And you want to simplify this. So you get 8 plus or minus 2 over 22 over 4. And now you're going to take a 2 out of all three of these. 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 8 4 times, and twice. So your answer is 4. Actually, this is problem number 4. Yep, 4 plus or minus root 22 over 2. So you can do problem number 5 on your own. I'll tell you what the answer is. It is 3 plus or minus 2 root 3. You do not have to complete the square on the test. You can do that on your own. Number 6. This is not a quadratic problem, but it's in quadratic form. It's a quartic problem.
So x squared.
So yeah, you're going to factor this. It's x to the 4th problem. So you got to know how to do this. This is on your exam. X to the 4th. There's up to 4 answers. So x squared times x squared. Now what two numbers multiply to give you 12 but add to be negative 7? Now what do? Set each of these equal to 0. So x squared minus 4 equals 0. And x squared minus 3 equals 0. Add 3. And square root, take the square root of both sides. So x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 3. In this one, add 4. And x is equal to what? Plus or minus root 2. So there's your 4 answers. These 2 answers are irrational, but they're real. And these 2 are real. They're just integers. What? What's that?
Nothing.
The next question is on the exam. They're asking you to find the discriminant, they want to know how many solutions there are. What is the discriminant? The discriminant is this portion of the quadratic formula. This is on the exam. It's b squared minus 4ac. Well, the b value is negative 50, so it's negative 50 squared. And make sure when you type that in your calculator, you put parentheses around it. Minus 4 times 5 times 125. When you do that, you get 0. So the discriminant is 0. Do you remember what that means? How many solutions are there? 1. You can do that? Next. This next one is on your test. It's on the exam. Now, it may not be a cubic one. It may be square root. It may be 4th root. But the good news is you could do these on your calculator. Do you remember how?
Yes.
Set it equal to 0. Shove everything on one side. But guess what? It's so easy you could do it without a calculator. How do you do it? Do you remember how to do this problem? These are nice to know how to do without a calculator. Subtract 5. Then what? Then what? Okay, so whatever root it is
what you need to
is what you do to both sides. So if it's square root, you square both sides. So you get 2x plus 1 equals, then you know what to do from here, right? Subtract 1.
13. I feel like this was on our test.
Huh?
We had a problem just like that on our test. It's just that didn't look like, or the review, it was on the review. It wasn't like you didn't solve it the same, but the answer came out the same and like you solved it like 2 separate ways.
Now, always, whenever you're doing any of these problems, you always must check for extraneous solutions. But this question, like I said, it might not be cube root, it might be second square root, but it's on your test. Okay,
Wait, I have a question. How would you put that on your calculator?
okay, good question. Okay, let's do the next one.
Oh, okay.
Let's do the next one on your calculator. Nick asked a great question. Nick asked a great question, you guys. How do you do this on your calculator? You guys did awful on this question. Why are you laughing?
You held no
You
punches.
That's mine.
You guys seriously did. Can anyone tell me how to type this in your calculator? Because I remember distinctly, after I taught you the calculator portion, you guys said, oh my gosh, why didn't you tell us this before? You don't remember? I'm doing it. Here it is. You are going to set it equal to 0. You're going to set it equal to 0, and you're going to graph it. And where the graph hits the x-axis, those are the solutions. Okay? So this hits at 0, and it actually got to change the window. It hits at 0, and it hits at 16. You got to change the window. Now, how to do it the other way would be, you have to bring this over. I'm going to show you here. But you're going to bring negative square root of x up to the other side. You have to square both sides. You have to FOIL this side. And you get 0 and 16. Well, that was the answer to that one. You have to square both sides. Okay? Next one. 0 and 16. Number 10 is on your test. Number 10 is on your test, on the exam. How do you do this? You could.
You can break it up into 2 columns.
You could. You could type this in your calculator, you know that? How would you type it in your calculator?
X squared.
How would you type this in your calculator? How do you get the absolute value? Right there. Type it in. X squared. Minus 16, or 6, I'm sorry, 6x. Minus 9. Then what should we do with this 6, with this minus, this 18? It should be minus 18. Hit enter. Now there's 3 answers here.
Negative 3, 3, and 10.
Not 10.
Is it not 10?
Nope. It's 9. this is how you do it by hand. You are going to set each of these equal to 0. You have two, it's an absolute value. So you have, let me write it out. You have x squared minus 6x minus 9 equals 18, or x squared minus 6x minus 9 equals negative 18. So you're going to subtract 18 here. So you get x squared minus 6x minus 27 equals 0. You're going to factor this. X minus 9, x plus 3, so x is 9, negative 3, and then subtract, or add 18 here. And x is 3. So those are your 3 answers. Number 11 is also on your test. Did you do this with your calculator? How would you do it? You could set it equal to 0. How would you do it without your calculator?
Break it up.
Just like that. So on this side, if you subtracted x and added 1, you get x is 5. And on this side, if you add x here, you get 3x. Add 1, you get negative 3. X is negative 1. And you always want to check for extraneous solutions.
Say 1 or negative? Negative.
Negative 1, I'm sorry. Yep, my mistake. So 5 and negative 1. Next, how do you solve these inequalities? This is a single 9th grade inequality. You guys know how to do this, right? X plus 3x minus 15 is greater than 3x plus 2x plus 2. Combine like terms. I'm going to subtract 4x, I'm going to subtract 2. So this is saying x is less than negative 17. Now how do you graph that? Here's the graph of it.
Are we putting in notation?
Yep, interval notation, it looks like this. Negative 17, I'm sorry,
No, negative.
negative infinity.
Is it gonna be in, the notation on the test?
Yes, it's all in interval notation. Now, number 13 is on your test. Gotta know this one. It's on your exam. This is a compound inequality. You guys had some trouble with this.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a calculator is not gonna help you on this one. You have, this is an and problem. You have negative 4x minus 5 is less than or equal to 4 minus 3x. And you have 4 minus 3x is less than 1 minus 4x. On this side, when you simplify it, you end up with negative 9 is less than or equal to x. Now, I like to flip it around. X is greater than or equal to negative 9. And then over here, you have x is less than negative 3. So if you want to know where is, I'm going to get a separate sheet of paper because I'm run out of room. Where is the x, where are the x's greater than or equal to negative 9
In parentheses, -3.
and less than negative 3? It's this piece part right here. So your answer would be between negative 9 and negative 3 with a parenthesis there. This next one, gotta know these. Do you remember this? How to do this one? If you type this in your calculator, x squared minus x minus 6, what is it? It's a parabola. You would type it in your calculator, and you would see that it hits at negative 2 and at 3, like this. At negative 2 and at 3. So can you tell me, you gotta know this. Now you could factor this. So can you tell me the portion of this graph that's greater than 0? It's these. So the answer would be from negative infinity to negative 2 with a bracket and 3 to positive infinity. This is on your test. And you could type that in your calculator. You could type this one in your calculator. Okay, for this one, if you type this in your calculator, what would you get?
Oh, 13?
Or you could do it by hand. You'll end up with negative 2 and 3. It's between negative 2 and 3 with brackets. You'll see it on your calculator if you type it. $16 is not on your exam. We'll skip it. I think we're running out of time, aren't we? Okay. Go to the calculator portion. I'm almost done.
The bell's gonna ring in like a second.
Okay. Oh. I'll start here 7th hour.